there, welcome back to my hot kitchen. I'm Wendy, and you and I are cooking up romantic feasts for you and your sweetie. Tonight's meal is inspired by flavors of the Southwest. The main course will feature corn-crusted cod, black beans with corn salsa, Southwest-style rice, and on the side, loaded cornbread. It's time to get that loaded cornbread going. So to start, you're going to want to combine 1 cup of yellow cornmeal, 1 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons baking powder, 1 teaspoon baking soda, and a ½ teaspoon of salt. And you'll want to whisk those together. Whisking them together allows the dry ingredients the chance to combine before the moist ingredients are added. It also helps to blend in the leavening and the salt, and it helps to aerate it and break up any lumps. Now, this is a quick bread recipe, so it's not as fussy as a cake. You don't necessarily need to actually sift them together to get great results. The next thing to do is to add the 1 cup of roasted corn. So I took an ear of corn and I roasted it on the grill for several minutes until I started to see some nice caramelization on the corn. ½ a pasilla pepper, ½ a jalapeno pepper, and a couple nice thick strips of bacon that have been cooked and crumbled, and work those into the dry ingredients. By mixing the additives like the bacon and the peppers and the corn into the dry ingredients, you help to ensure that they will stay suspended and evenly mixed throughout the cornbread rather than sinking to the bottom. It's kind of a little magical trick there. Work a little well into your dry ingredients, and then it's on to the moist ingredients. So you're going to need to combine 1 cup of soured milk or buttermilk with 2 eggs, and a ¼ cup of butter that you've melted and then cooled down a little bit. It should still be in its liquid form when you add it in, but it shouldn't be piping hot anymore. Whisk those together until you see that you've reached a nice even consistency and you don't see any more lumps of eggs sticking out looking at you. Go ahead and add your ¼ cup of honey now. The honey is going to add a nice sweetness and contrast the savoriness of the peppers and the corn and the bacon that you've mixed into the cornbread. It's going to be delicious. It's helpful when you're mixing these if you have them all at the same temperature, room temperature. So allow the milk and the eggs and the butter to come to room temperature before you mix them. Then just take all this yumminess, pour it into the middle of the dry ingredients, and begin mixing together. You want to just mix it until you see that everything's moistened and combined together. This is not the sort of recipe that you need to work all the lumps out in. I'm going to give the side of my bowl a little scrape here and loosen up all that flour and goodness, drawing it into the center so it's a little bit easier to mix. I'm going to actually use my spatula to mix this the rest of the way. The peppers and the bacon and the corn are making it a little bit hard to whisk. Folding it together. Well, that looks really good right there. I don't see any more flour or cornmeal. It looks like everything's moistened together. So now it's on to the next step, which is to give myself a little space to work with here, and then to pour these into my little mini loaf pan. You can always use a muffin tin or just a regular old square pan for this as well. Fill it up just a little past halfway, about 2/3 really. And what you'll want to do is leave about a ½ cup on reserve because it's going to turn into your corn crusting mix that you'll use for the fish. And even these out a little bit here. Excellent. And then these guys are ready to go in the oven. I have my oven preset to 350 degrees. And I'll be baking those for about 25 minutes. Let's see how this cornbread is doing. It smells so good. Looks really good. Now let's test it for doneness before we get too excited about it. That's a clean toothpick. I'm gonna go ahead and get these out of the pan so they can cool off without condensing on the sides. Make that crust nice. See how easily those release when you grease them? So with the cornbread ready to go, it's time to turn your attention to the side dishes. The first one being the rice pilaf, because that's the most time consuming. I'm adding a little olive oil to my pan here. I've got it preheated, so the oil is going to get nice and hot really quickly. A little smokiness is a wonderful thing to see. And to that, I'm going to go ahead and add half of a diced up jalapeno pepper, 1 clove of garlic, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. All that heat and olive oil is going to make the flavor of the chili powder and the cumin really enhance. It's also going to cook the jalapeno just a little bit and soften it up. So when you start to see it turn really dark and it smells extremely aromatic, go ahead and add 3/4 of a cup of your favorite long grain rice. Saute that in. You want to saute that in just until you start to see some of the grains of rice sort of puff up and turn opaque. This sauteing action allows the grains of rice to be coated with the oil and the spices, which gives a nice fluffy texture and also helps to spread all the delicious flavors through the whole pilaf. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup or so of lime juice and about 1 cup of water. Scrape down the sides of my pan here and make sure I've got all the rice actually in the water. And then I'm going to salt it. This is your one shot to truly and properly season your rice. And watch it come up to a boil, and just as it comes up to a boil, we'll drop it down to a nice low simmer. I'm going to go ahead and put that lid on there and move on to the black beans. So I have my pan pre-warmed here as well. I'm going to go ahead and add some more olive oil to that too, and I'm going to get a clove of garlic working in it. Give this a little loving stir here. Then add about 1 cup of cooked black beans. Mix those two together. So once the beans have been all loved up by the goodness that is the olive oil and the garlic, add about 1/2 cup of that delicious roasted corn. I ended up using 2 ears of corn, by the way, for the roasted corn in this dish. Blend those two together. Look at how pretty these colors are. I love the way the black beans and the pretty yellow corn with a little bit of char play off each other. I'm going to add a couple more drops of olive oil along here. It's going to make this dish delicious in the end. I'm going to set my heat to a nice low temperature and then cover these with a lid and let the flavors marry for a little bit of time while I prepare the rest of the dinner. So the rice and beans have had about 10 minutes to cook. Now let's give them a little check in here. Give these a little taste. That's nice. The rice is good and tender. I'm gonna go ahead and take it off the heat and replace with a nice big saute pan. In the meantime, let's also give the beans a little bit of love. Nice little stir here, just keep them moving, keep them engaged, keep them happy. Replace the lid and let those continue doing their thing while we get the fish going. So remember that cornbread mix that I set aside? Now I'm gonna use that. Before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of milk to it to thin it down and make it more like a nice coating batter. Just want to add enough milk so that it coats the fish, but it's not too thick. Don't want it to compete with the cornbread. I think that'll do the trick right there. Now let's talk about the fish for a second. So one thing I always like to do to my fish before I cook it is to squeeze a little lemon or lime juice or vinegar over it. This helps to sort of detox the fish a little bit, helps to brighten up the flavors. These are some nice big fillets that I'm working with here, so I'm going to make sure to get the insides of them as well. Then I'm going to give myself a little bit of space here because I'm bringing in the cutting board. Put the finishing touches on these gorgeous cod fillets. This is true cod, by the way, that I'm working with tonight. It just looked really, really good, and it fries up beautifully. It's got a nice texture for this. So one other thing that's really important to do before you serve a fish dish to your sweetie is to make sure that all of the bones are out. You don't want your sweetie to be eating that. And if it's fried, it's going to be really hard to detect until it's down in their throat. So run your finger along the lines where the bones would be, kind of dig in a little bit just to make sure that one's good. And then the same on the other fillet. Oh, there's one in there too. Place them well away from your workspace just so they don't get tangled up in the mix again. I'm going to go ahead and cut these into 2 slices here because they're really big and they'll be a lot easier to work with if they're a more manageable size. Those look amazing. Bring on the batter. Just making sure that the mix is still all engaged and mixed together. I'm just going to drop these lovely little fillets in there. Give them a little toss, a little coating, a little love. I'm going to give my hands a little rinse off here. And then we're going to add some butter to the saute pan, a nice generous amount, like a 1/4 cup or so. Hey, some romantic meals aren't always healthy. Then, get that butter melted and happy. Oh, that looks great. Nice big happy bubbles in there. I'm gonna add these yummy fillets. Flatten them out, get a nice crust on there. Oh, these are gonna taste really, really good. What a nice take on Southwest cuisine. Let these guys fry for 2 to 5 minutes per side, or until you see that it's nice and golden brown. These little beauties are looking good. Check and see if it's time to give them a little flip here. Seems some nice golden brown color underneath. Work with this one first. They're a little bit delicate, so use a soft touch when you're flipping these. Yum. Beautiful. Wow, those look so good. Give a little swirl here and let that butter find its way onto the new side. And let them finish off. Just be a couple more minutes here. Let's finish up these delicious little beans. Give them a little stir here. And then I have a tomato, a Roma tomato that I've pulped and diced, a little bit of cilantro, and a couple of green onions. I'm gonna fold those in with a little bit of lime juice. And this is what's gonna make that corn salsa black bean side dish I was talking about earlier. then plenty of salt and pepper, just to really round out those flavors and make them all pop. Give it a little loving stir here. Give these guys a little taste to make sure you've got all the seasonings in there the way they like them. Bueno. Turn the lid there, let those finish off. In the meantime, let's turn our attention back to the fish. Check the other side here and make sure that we've got a good color going on. Check for doneness. Feels nice and firm, a little bit flaky. Let's get these out of the pan and onto the plates. Plate these towards the front here. Leave a little room for the rice and the beans. Oh, those look so good. Now I'm going to empty this stuff out of the bottom of my pan here, and I'm going to create a little Southwest style beurre blanc. So when I think of Southwest food, I think of food that encompasses all of the best elements of Mexican and French and American cooking. Spanish cooking as well in there. So for this tasty little beurre blanc, I'm going to go ahead and do another half of a tomato, a couple more scallions, and a little dollop of that delicious roasted corn. That last little bit I added was a chipotle pepper. Move these around in the pan a little bit, get them all mixed together evenly. And then it's time to bring in some more lime juice. You're gonna need several squeezes of lime juice here. And what your objective is to do is to add it in and then cook it out. And this is what's gonna make the beurre blanc sauce. The vegetables are going to cook in the acidic lime juice and soften up a bit. The lime juice is going to enhance all their flavors. And then the butter is going to round it out and make it delicious and yummy. This should be a quick work here. Keep everything together if possible. And then swirl in 2 tablespoons of cold butter while removing the pan from the heat. And this is going to be delicious. You want to use the cold butter because it gives the right texture. And don't worry, it will all melt. Just keep stirring. And just when the butter is all melted, you can bring it over here and layer it over the top of your fish. Just a nice little garnish. So good. Really encompasses those delicious flavors of the American Southwest. Now fluff the rice pilaf just a touch before you go ahead and plate it. Yummy Southwest rice. And finally, the delicious black beans with corn salsa. Let's put these on the table. I'm gonna need this delicious cornbread. Well, I'm sure your sweetie will be very pleased with that delicious Southwest style meal you just whipped up. Pair this up with a nice dry white wine. Think a Spanish Tempranillo or a Viognier. Adios, apron. Hi.
Yeah.
You light my fire.
Really?
Yeah, will you let me?
I will. There we go.
Ooh,
Excuse me.
that's quite all right. How you doing tonight?
Excellent. Outstanding now.
Doesn't this look pretty?
This fish.
Yum.
This is such a hot kitchen.
So thanks for joining me in my hot kitchen tonight. Have fun turning up the heat in your kitchen, and I'll see you next week. Night night.